What is going on, friends? Welcome into Mercado Airwaves. I am Mike Mercado, and I want to thank you so much for joining us for our interview with MMA insider and beat reporter Mike Pendleton. He was at UFC 225, which was here in Chicago at the United Center. He gives us all the details at what happened at one of the biggest cards on paper in the UFC this year. We also talk about UFC 226 and all the possible matchups and fights that we could be seeing at both UFC and at Bellator MMA. You don't want to miss this interview. But before we get to Mike, here's a quick message. Unhappy with your current living situation? Want to get out of your parents' house? Do you live in the Chicagoland area? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then I have the realtor just for you, Amy Lonsky with Keller Williams. Hey, this is Mike Mercado from Mercado Airwaves and Outreach Radio Chicago. When the special lady and I started looking into buying instead of renting, we only trusted one person, and that's Amy Lonsky. With a passion for real estate, Amy will put you and your family first so you can start your life in your new dream home. Contact Amy for any other inquiries at 630-550-1518. That's 630-550-1518. Or email Amy at amylonsky@kw.com. That's AIMEELONSKI@kw.com. What's up, friends? Mike here from Mercado Airwaves. If you missed any one of our past interviews with amazing guests like future Hall of Famer and pound for pound best fighter in the world, UFC flyweight champion Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson,
another day at the office, I get to go out there and test my skill.
to award-winning producer, director, and actor Orlando Jones. Orlando, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, sir. I'm good, brother. How you doing?
And all the other interesting guests we've had on. Joining us today is director and writer David Ferrier.
Thanks so much, brother. I appreciate you having me on the show.
MMA legend Chael Sonnen joins us today.
Keep listening to your show. This is great. Thanks, my friend.
Just subscribe to us on iTunes at Mercado Airwaves. And while you're there, please like, review, and rate us, friends. It helps so much. We also have a Patreon for anyone who would like to support the show. Just visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves and see how you can get all of our interviews ad-free and before anyone else, and how you can get your business or company spotlighted on the show. Follow us on Twitter at mmercado2333. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/MikeMercado2333. And if you would like to see what we're up to behind the scenes, follow us on Instagram, MikeMercado2333. Thanks for listening and all the support. Thank you for keeping with us, guys. Here is our interview with MMA journalist Mike Pendleton. Enjoy. How you feeling, man? It was an awesome weekend here in Chicago, UFC 225.
Yeah, it was a great weekend.
So let me ask you this. How does it feel to, be a superstar and, just get name dropped by Ariel Helwani like you somebody or something?
I didn't expect that. Ariel and I talked throughout the week. We met at the hotel on Wednesday last week and, exchanged a few texts. As we've done, we're friends. I didn't expect it. I'm not big time.
Nah, dude, it makes my heart to grow like the Grinch when I see how much success you're going through, because for a lot of you who don't know, this grind of the MMA beat is very hard. It's very grindy. It's not like doing the NBA or the MLB beat or the NHL beat. This one's a very tough grind, and it culminated here at the United Center with UFC 225, man. On paper, the prelims and the fight pass, and it was off the charts. It was an amazing undercard before we got to the pay-per-view.
I think there was a lot to be said about the conversation that was being had for what fights were where on this card, but I think overall it delivered in the sense of the Fight Pass prelims had great fights, the FS1 prelims had great fights, and obviously the pay-per-view had one of the greatest fights of all time, definitely of the year.
So let's go to the elephant in the room, man. I mean, we're both from Chicago, or at least, we live in Chicago. I born and raised here, and I have to admit I'm a wrestling fan, so I'm a mark for CM Punk. But I'm also not delusional. I understand how professional sports works and how amateur sports works. And what we saw with Mike Jackson and CM Punk, while I may not have felt disrespected, I also haven't bled inside a cage. I also haven't, while I did my wrestling in high school, I haven't torn limbs and broken bones doing Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu and all this like these guys are in the MMA world. What did you think coming out of it, and what was the feeling at the United Center, because you were there live, after the open of the pay-per-view?
It was a good fight. I think there's a lot of misguided hate towards Mike Jackson. I'm not just saying that because I spent a lot of time with him.
Okay, we got to get into that too.
But I just think that there's Even in my conversations with him afterwards, if you don't understand mixed martial arts and you don't understand the way he fought that fight, he said it to me. He said it on multiple shows following the fight. He wanted the first round knockout, didn't get it, so then he decided he was just going to beat him up. Mike's right. He is a nice guy, and he just wanted to show him that he didn't belong. And you know what? And just let me stop giving Mike Jackson all the credit. CM Punk showed so much heart. You could hear in the crowd people saying he's gassed. It needs to be done. He needs to do this. And he went all the way to a decision.
Do you think Dana went a little far with what he said in the post conference about Mike Jackson? While I think Mike Jackson's a nice enough guy as it is. Everything you hear, and then obviously knowing you and what you've said, so you root for the guy. But do you think Dana was out of line? Because it's not just Dana. While his word may be the loudest, I mean, you listen to somebody like Brandon Schaub who goes off and says that he believes that Dana White is correct in this thing. Do you think this has definitely got it a little bit more out of hand than people thought it was going to?
Well, when a lot of people say, listen, Dana is the loudest voice in the room, and Brendan Schaub is amazing at what he does, and I'm a huge fan of Brendan Schaub, but Brendan Schaub also likes to comment on everything Dana says.
Sure.
It wasn't a beautiful martial arts performance. It wasn't Yoel and Robert Whittaker.
Right.
It wasn't even Joseph Benavidez. It wasn't even Tai Tuivasa and Andrei Arlovsky. But it takes two to tango. And if you want to fight, then you have to have both guys willing to. And listen, I just credited CM Punk, but the skills just aren't there. And there's something to be said of, wanting to make an example out of CM Punk, which Mike Jackson originally thought he was going to do, and rather just prove that CM Punk doesn't belong in the UFC. And that was accomplished.
Very interesting stuff, man. I think we could talk about that whole situation, whether or not the fight should have taken place in the first place on pay-per-view, and that's a whole conversation of its own. But I want to stay positive because I thought the card was really good, and keeping it rolling, at least to me, with the co-main event and the main event. I really want to hit on that with you, being so up close and personal. First of all, the interim title. Should this have been an interim welterweight title? I mean, look, Tyron is right there. Like, I know he had surgery and he was waiting for that super fight, quote unquote, with GSP or Diaz or whatever. But I like Covington and I like obviously Dos Anjos. Like, I like both of them. They're hell of a fighters. And shout out to Colby for getting himself in that position, good or bad, indifferent or not. Whether he's using the Trump thing for real or he's using it to as Donald Trump did, to become president. My thing should that have been a title fight?
Yeah, why not? Listen, you're not going to market. Okay, Robbie Lawler's out of it, right? Like, he has a torn ACL. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson just lost to Darren Till. But Darren Till didn't make weight.
Right.
So, yes, this fight has been in place as a title fight before Thompson and Till fought. But at the end of the day, this has to be, because you can't market. Rafael Dos Anjos is not marketable. He's not. Conor McGregor made him more of a name than he ever was. Sure. To the casual fan, which is what the UFC cares about, and they never even fought. So then you have the hatred between Colby Covington and Tyron Woodley, and you have Colby Covington himself. And what I'll say is why it needs to be an interim title is Colby Covington's talk can be recognized by almost anyone of any age. It's not. There's some legitimacy to it, but he goes right to that line. He goes right to that line. So the best way to hype a fight for Tyron Woodley to get a money fight is either Javier Dos Anjos is a belt holder, or Colby Covington, which happened, the biggest trash talker in the division, gets a belt and is able to use months of having this interim belt to really build the fight, promote the fight, and it's already working. Yeah. It's already in a good way and a bad way. In a bad way, I've never seen Tyron Woodley so ready to end a man's career.
Sure.
And that's what he says. And the thing is, Tyron's always doing other things, and we don't really get to see the fighter side of Woodley. Now we are, and it's kind of scary. This is exactly why Joe Rogan told Colby Covington to stop talking. Then they had their whole beef, but and it's working in a good sense because now everyone's on the champion side. That's the one thing the UFC hated. Like, anyone want to tell me what's going on with Nico Montoya? Like, no one knows. Good call. That's why everyone's on Valentina Shevchenko's bandwagon as well. I mean, she's an amazing fighter, but when your champions aren't getting love, the UFC will find a way to fix that. And Colby Covington having an interim title only helps Tyron Woodley.
And I think that's such a great point to really drive home is we have our baby, for all you wrestling fans, we have our baby face and we have our heel now. And it depends on what side of the fence you are. But for the welterweight title, and now the way that everything is kind of working itself out, I wonder if we're going to... I wonder what it all means leading down the road of the sport in general now that we have this ESPN deal. Like, are we going to see more interim titles when you can't get... Like, what happens with Robert Whittaker now that he has the broken hand? Like, where do we start going to this point of, are we done with trying to sell the pay-per-views by belts, or are we going to build superstars to make the belts important? What do you think?
I think the interim belts, they're not needed, but I'm hoping that, we may see a few more with the ESPN deal, but I think that they're really going into a time where we're going to see a unique production and layout of their fights and of their fighters. I think the ESPN deal is what they wanted for a very long time. I think it's a great deal. My biggest concern is not what the UFC is going to do with the ESPN deal. It's what is the ESPN going to do with their UFC deal. They have Ariel Helwani. They have Brett Okamoto. They have Phil Murphy. I'm a fan of all those guys. I'm friends with all those guys. Josh Rothstein or Greg Rothstein, I think it's the other guy. He's a very talented guy. But what I don't want is on the verge of UFC 232, just throwing a number out there. I don't want Stephen A. Smith talking about something he doesn't even know anything about. We saw that on FS1 when there were big fights, Shannon Sharp and Skip Bayless going back and forth. It was embarrassing. I love Max Kellerman. I think he's great in boxing.
Yeah,
but
one of the best.
He, in my humble opinion, kind of embarrassed himself when he said McGregor would never touch Floyd Mayweather, and it's going to be embarrassing. Listen, I get it. He's pro boxing,
exactly,
and that makes sense. But I just hope that the big heads there, the big talking heads, they really know what they're doing. And I hope ESPN builds a team that really just focuses on the MMA side.
I can't wait to talk a little bit more about the ESPN deal, ESPN Plus. I can't wait to have you on the show live, probably in the new studios that we're building, so we could talk about that. But we have a lot more things that we could get to, and your time is precious, Mikey, so we're going to keep pounding through this, my friend. The main event, brother. I mean, it's the second time I've had the pleasure to interview Robert Whittaker, a sweetheart of a man. The second time he's beaten probably the most dangerous guy in his division with a broken limb, one way or the other, with one leg or with one hand. How does Robert Whittaker, and mind you, this one was close, but how does he keep doing it? Is he that damn good?
Well, I think Robert Whittaker is a prime example of a guy moving to his right weight class and showing just how good he is. He got starched by Stephen Thompson back at 170, and now, he's beaten a made of steel Yoel Romero twice. But the thing is, and I take nothing away from Robert Whittaker, but I don't think he won that fight.
Ooh, okay.
I really don't. I had one of the best seats in the house, and I don't see how that could have been scored. I am happy that UFC 225 took place where I was able to attend. I am unhappy with how the state of Illinois went through with all of the fight week.
Do you want to talk about that? You want to dig in? All right, before, you know what, Mike? That's wonderful. I want to know where your brain is going with this. So, before we get into what's the biggest issue in the sport, anytime I get the honor or privilege to talk to some of these fighters, it's one of the first things we talk about. So, before we get into the Achilles heel, the kryptonite of this wonderful sport and these brands, what did you think in general, besides who won the fight? What did you think about the fight, the main event? Did it live up to the hype? Will we get a part 3? And then we're going to tackle what everybody wants us to talk about.
Yeah, no, it definitely lived up to the hype. I mean, how could it not? You know, the only thing that took away from the hype was no belt, but no one's talking about the no belt. They're talking about Robert Whittaker fighting with one hand. They're talking about Yoel Romero being made of steel. You know, they're talking about one of the greatest fights we've ever seen. This may be one of my favorite fights since McGregor-Diaz, too, back at UFC. That's how competitive I thought the fight was. And, you know, there are many great fights. You know, since then, I mean, Cub Swanson, Doo Ho Choi comes to mind as well. But this was a fight that I think helped put both guys into that next level. You know, the Yoel Romero, Robert Whittaker coming in to this, you know, I could see why CM Punk, I'm kind of backtracking here, I could see why CM Punk was put on the pay-per-view card, but it was like a bittersweet shot for the UFC because you're like, oh, okay, so we watched this for CM Punk. He probably shouldn't have been in there. And then you watch Yoel Romero and Robert Whittaker and you go, oh my God, these guys are the best of the best.
Right.
I want to watch them fight again. So it worked out. It worked out in everyone's favor but Yoel Romero's, to be honest with you.
And it sucks, man. Imagine if Yoel Romero was 29, 31 instead of almost 40 years old and all those years of Olympic wrestling on that body. But, you know, speaking of Yoel, one of my favorite fighters in the game right now, Robert Whittaker's right up there too. It's unbelievable. But it's what's killing the sport, man. Let's talk about it. And, you know, some people are going to complain about the Illinois State Commission, which it's you know, more than adequate in this scenario. And we'll see if they learn if we get any more pay-per-views. But there's the UFC for a long time now has been snake bitten with this weight cut issue. And some people believe it's the time change of doing it earlier now, which, you know, obviously has something to do with it. But maybe the answer is with one of the I think it's ONE FC, one of the other organizations of kind of testing you what your body weight is as you're walking around. But Mikey, I mean, you're part of this. You're on the grind. What's the word around it with all this, man?
I'm not going to go against the boss. I'll just say that. But all the fighters I talked to this past week said they liked early morning weigh-ins. They almost feel in a sense of they're getting punished for the actions of just a few others. And I think the bigger point lies in you're getting over to ESPN. You need to do something about ceremonial weigh-ins. Let's make it count. Now, I understand the fighter's beef. I believe that a weight cut starts 8 weeks out, 6 weeks out, 4 weeks out, not 10 days out. Sure. And I think proper planning, and I call for more nutritionists. You know, there are plenty of them. George Lockhart, Mike Dolce are probably two of the best, but let's get more out there. Melee, I forget his name. I know he goes by Melee Diet, I believe, so excuse me for butchering that. But there are only a select few. You know, we have all these amazing gyms. Where are all the amazing nutritionists? But at the end of the day as well, it's not up to a third, maybe a second party to come in and help a fighter. A fighter's got to be disciplined. I mean, he's the talk of the conversation right now because of what we saw on Saturday night in the main event. But Kelvin Gastelum had to leave 170 because he self-admitted, I just love food too much. You know, so it's on the fighters. And I think, you know, before they get mad about early morning weigh-ins, they need to realize that some of the very biggest names in the sport are not doing weight cuts properly, and it's on them. You know, you could be mad at the UFC all you want, but, you know, if I break something in a store, I got to buy it. You know, if I do something wrong as a kid in my house, I got to pay the consequences. If I break a law, I got to pay a consequence. And at this point, you know, it doesn't matter. If I get pulled over and I have illegal things in my car and there's 4 people in the car, we're all getting in trouble, you know? So when the fighter doesn't make weight, we're all getting in trouble. Fans are, the fighters are, and the UFC is, because they don't want this conversation. You know, everybody's getting in trouble. The fighters are carrying too much weight in their motor vehicles, their body, and now everyone in that car with them is getting in trouble. That's what it is.
What's up, friends? Mike here from Mercado Airwaves. If you missed any one of our past interviews with amazing guests like future Hall of Famer and pound for pound best fighter in the world, UFC flyweight champion Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson,
Another day at the operator to go out there and test my skill.
to award-winning producer, director, and actor Orlando Jones,
Orlando, how you doing,
How
buddy?
you, sir? I'm good, brother. How you doing?
and all the other interesting guests we've had on. Joining us today is director and writer David Ferrier.
Thanks so much, brother. I appreciate you having me on the show.
MMA legend Chael Sonnen joins us today.
Keep listening to your show. This is great. Thanks, my friend.
Just subscribe to us on iTunes at Mercado Airwaves. And while you're there, please like, review, and rate us, friends. It helps so much. We also have a Patreon for anyone who would like to support the show. Just visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves and see how you can get all of our interviews ad-free and before anyone else, and how you can get your business or company spotlighted on the show. Follow us on Twitter at mmercado2333. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/MikeMercado2333. And if you would like to see what we're up to behind the scenes, follow us on Instagram, MikeMercado2333. Thanks for listening and all the support. Unhappy with your current living situation? Want to get out of your parents' house? Do you live in the Chicagoland area? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then I have the realtor just for you, Amy Lonsky with Keller Williams. Hey, this is Mike Mercado from Mercado Airwaves and Outreach Radio Chicago. When the special lady and I started looking into buying instead of renting, we only trusted one person, and that's Amy Lonsky. With a passion for real estate, Amy will put you and your family first so you can start your life in your new dream home. Contact Amy for any other inquiries at 630-550-1518. That's 630-550-1518. Or email Amy at amylonsky@kw.com. That's AIMEELONSKI@kw.com.
Mercado Airwaves is brought to you by supporters at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves.
And with Yoel, maybe this time around we could be a little bit, I don't even want to say lenient because obviously something went wrong. But the idea is he would have, quote unquote, made weight had he been able to go later, but the Illinois commission decided not to let him. And it probably hurt the card because the main event now loses its championship fight. But I think it's the Joe Rogan route. It's a very interesting route of more divisions. And, I don't understand this purist thought of, no, we can't add more divisions to dilute it. We're adding interim belts to every other card. How about we do a 10-pound division every 10 pounds? And we have more title fights, more undercards, more UFC on ESPN title fights. Can you imagine the dream matchups that we would consider catchweights? Could you imagine this idea? But why does the sport, you're on the pulse, why does the sport refuse to do that?
Well, they're there. They don't need to make these divisions. These divisions have been made. I encourage everyone. I want to say, it's on Rogan's. Listen to John McCarthy talk to Joe Rogan on his podcast. They break down everything. And I think Joe Rogan's right. I think, there's a way to do more divisions, but John McCarthy had a better answer than I can give you because he lays it out in full. But the divisions are there.
Right.
It's up to the UFC to make them. Right now, I want to play devil's advocate here, Mike, because it's
please.
you said let's do 165, let's do 195, let's do maybe a 225,
right?
And I would say before we get into all that, I would just say, well, what about the men's flyweight division? Where's the depth in that? What about the women's featherweight division? Where's the depth in that? Where's the depth in the women's flyweight division? So before we really start asking ourselves, or calling for more weight classes, we need to and the men's light heavyweight division, 205. Yeah. I mean, hell, it's hard to argue that Anthony Smith shouldn't be in the top 15 after that performance against Rashad Evans.
You're not lying.
That's how wide open that division is. And, no disrespect to Anthony Smith, who I talked to this past week, but one win gets him in the top 15. Yeah, unfortunately, there's no depth in these divisions. So before we start adding, we need to build more. And, I think that goes down to an even bigger point of Dana White's. When I call you to get a fight or to make a fight, take the fight. If you don't take the fight, see you later.
Damn, it's a hell of a point, Mike, because I think about Mighty Mouse. I think about Demetrius, and the time I got to talk to him, we basically talked about this idea of his rival. Who's his rival? And we might get it now this time with this part 2, but he doesn't want to fight Dominic. He doesn't want to fight TJ. That's wonderful that you bring that up because we're talking about one of the all-time greatest, and we're asking him to get out of his division because there's not enough depth down there. That's an interesting point, Mike. I'm very fascinated about that. But there is one thing we do know: Conor being gone. There's a lot of dream fights that we get to see. I want to talk about a little bit UFC 226. You're one of the only people who I know who can appreciate what we're going to see that weekend, my friend. Can you imagine sitting down on a Chicago night that's warm and beautiful outside? You're winding your day down to watch the light heavyweight champion and the heavyweight champion go at it. Miocic Cormier, dude, how are you feeling about this, man?
I love this fight. I love this fight because we got this hype of Francis Ngannou. He took Alistair Overeem's soul in Detroit and he did all of that. Listen, this is no disrespect to Francis, but, UFC 220 showed one thing, right? In the main and co-main, it showed there are levels to this. Daniel Cormier says that all the time. There are levels to this game. There are levels to this game. And he's right. Now, unfortunately, he's right to the point where, Daniel, there's levels to this. I know he's undefeated at heavyweight. I know he's a great wrestler, an Olympic wrestler. I know he's one of the greatest fighters of all time. But he couldn't get past that John Jones thing. And he's older now. And there's a difference in being Francis Ngannou and hitting like a truck and hitting like Stipe and having an all-around game. And once you're knocked out, and he's coming off that knockout loss, everything changes. Everything, especially when you get older. I don't think Stipe goes in there and cleans him, but I think Stipe goes in there and wins it. And here's the beauty of this fight. It's the behind the scenes that makes it even prettier, right? Yeah. Because I was thinking about this on my way home. I go, what other division, what other scenario could the light heavyweight champion win his biggest rivalry, get suspended, that loser of the fight, his rival, could go take on the heavyweight champ, and then when the light heavyweight champ comes back, he'll fight Brock Lesnar. So, in the end, Dana White is doing what has carried boxing for so long, and that is beef up the heavyweight division. We're going to have 4 of the greatest fighters of all time possibly fighting. Obviously we have to make sure Stipe and DC get there next month, and hopefully Brock and John fight. But USADA. This is the only...
They have to beat USADA first. Then they
Exactly.
Dude, you read my mind too, because I was going to tell you I need you to stay down to mess with me a little bit, because we were going to go down the hopes I have of John Jones, and we're going to go to that 1 second. But low key, one of the fights I'm looking forward to the most this year, Holloway, Brian Ortega, Max Holloway. You talk about just 2 of the baddest dudes on the planet. All the heart. This is going all 5 rounds. Let's get into Holloway and Ortega. What do you think about that, man?
I hate to say it, but it is what it is. I'm all in. I'm all in on Max Holloway. I think that Brian Ortega is a really good fighter, but you don't smoke a legend the way Holloway has smoked Jose Aldo. And listen, I could tell you I love Conor McGregor, which is true. I can tell you I love John Jones. I can tell you all the fighters I love, and it's very, very true. But I am all in on the blessed era. This man, I had this man coming in on 9 days or 8 days notice, 6 days notice, to fight Khabib, and I had him beating Khabib. I had him beating Khabib, I'm all in on Max Holloway. And the thing is, I'm still on Max Holloway no matter how this fight goes, because I think Holloway, in a different sense, he's Hawaiian, so he's humble, but I think he knows what to say. So I could see Holloway, even if he lost this fight, having that superstar moment like Conor did when he lost to Nate Diaz, and everyone loved him more after the loss. I think this is Max Holloway's time right now, and I think everybody else is just living in it. I'm very impressed by what I saw Ortega do against Frankie Edgar. Let's be honest, Frankie Edgar did not need to take that fight.
Nope.
But this is the best fight for Max Holloway, because you have a a young guy. You know, I love Frankie. I think he has one of the greatest coaches in Mark Henry. But, you know, I don't want to keep seeing Max Holloway take on the veterans of the sport. You know, you need some young blood. And I think he's got it right now. Brian Ortega, it's going to be a hell of a fight. But the biggest thing for me is Max Holloway starts off the first round in the feeling out process. He never gasses himself out. It's like third round Yoel Romero. We have a third round Max Holloway.
This one is so hard to pick. Like, this to me is a pick 'em between these two guys. I'm with you. I think it's so hard because if Max Holloway wins, that solidifies himself. But imagine if in a close fight, or if he catches him in the 4th or 5th round, Ortega gets the title, and then we have to get a part 2. But not just a part 2, because Hawaii has been through so much, and they've just been, their people just need a pick-me-up. We get Ortega, Holloway 2 in Hawaii for the title. Like, that should be a thing.
I think this is one of the best fights of the year. You know, we can only look at it on paper and see how it plays out. But on paper, I think it's one of the best fights of the year. I think Brian Ortega is the true number one contender, and I think he's the right opponent for Max Holloway because there is that youth, factor to it. You know, Ortega has been a stud in his last few fights, but this is the true test. And Maxie Baby, as I like to call him, I think this is his time right now, and I think he's going to be one of those guys that we see. We may not give Max Holloway the Conor McGregor platform, but he just builds it. He builds it, and if you build it, they will come. And that's how I feel about Max Holloway. Eventually, everyone will be on board. And if not, then, as he says, as I said earlier, it is what it is.
We'll see. I mean, I think we all know that depending on what happens with Conor and Khabib later on this year, and if Holloway gets past Ortega, and especially in decisive fashion, Holloway might get that call to fight one of those two guys in a big pay-per-view next year. So we'll talk about that. You know, we'll go our conspiracy ways depending on health and winners and stuff. Mike, let's going to wrap this up, buddy, because I've had you for a long time. We both kind of feel that. I think we both feel right. We got Jones-Lesnar. That looks to be a thing if everything goes through USADA. And chances are, if Stipe wins, he's going to face the winner of that fight. I mean, that's going to be insane. Mike, just in general, man, how was your experience having, UFC, a big pay-per-view, come to the United Center and, all the hard work you've done to kind of have such a big night? How would you sum up your experience this last week and a half?
Listen, this last week and a half was the most, and listen, you're not taking up too much of my time. I have nothing but time for you, my friend. I could talk all day if
I don't
you
deserve you. Stop it, buddy. We don't deserve you.
But UFC 225, I knew I would go down there earlier in the week and see who I could talk to, but I would never imagine, the first person I see on Fight Week is Ariel Helwani. I wouldn't imagine that, I get to spend time with Mike Jackson the night before weigh-ins, talking to, I got to give this guy so many props. He's a guy nobody knows, not nobody, but the casual won't know him. I know him very well. Jared Gordon, he is, despite all the great things that happened this past week for me, I think being able to meet and talk just life with Jared Gordon was a huge thing. I encourage everyone to look up his interview with Ariel Helwani. If you want to see a guy who really persevered through life, I would look that up. Jared definitely was the whipped cream. And being able to meet Bruce Buffer and the things Bruce Buffer did for me. And I don't want to call it all out. Bruce knows what he did for me. I put him at the cherry on the top of it all. Every fighter that I talked to was amazing. I just, if you don't mind, I want to thank them. Anthony Smith, James Krause, BJ Penn was amazing. Bruce Buffer.
Dude. Hold on. First of all, congratulations on meeting your brand new boss. We'll get to in a second. But, dude, BJ Penn. Come on, kid.
I know.
Come on. All right. Let's go. Go on. Keep going.
No, I mean, I know, man. It was crazy, but everybody, coaches too, Chris Luttrell,
nice.
the coach of Claudia Gadelia. Anthony Smith was great to me. Jim Walter, who manages Anthony Smith, great to me. I could go on and on and on about everybody that I met. They all know who they are, and I thank all of them. Mike Jackson really took a lot of time out for me this past week. Ricardo Lamas, Mike Santiago, on a personal level, neither of those guys have anything to hang their heads down for. They put that night was for them, and you win some, you lose some, but all of Chicago was in the building at 5 o'clock to watch Santiago fight, and every seat was filled when Lamas fought, and Curtis Blades as well. All these guys have been great, and for me, man, it wasn't about me. I just capitalized on opportunity. I don't think anything of it, to be honest with you. Everyone's telling me how great it is, and it is great, and I'm extremely thankful and humbled by all of it, but I didn't expect any of it. I just grinded. I just took the opportunities that I thought would be there, and I know a lot of good people. All these fighters are great people, and all these managers and coaches are great people as well, so it's nothing I did. It speaks to the volume of the special people around me, and that's it.
What have you been on right now? What projects are you working on?
Right now, I'm trying to decompress after UFC 225. I mean, we do have Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series coming back tonight. So Greg Hardy will fight on that. Depending on how that goes, I may have something based out of that. I encourage everyone to get UFC Fight Pass because Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series is great.
Phenomenal.
It's what gave us Mike Santiago. So and a few other guys. I believe Sugar Sean O'Malley was found on that. So there's plenty of great fighters coming to that. Right now, I'm not really I'm not doing anything. I'll write news. I'll find some people to interview in the next coming weeks. And then right around UFC 226, I'll try to iron out some more stuff and hopefully continue this pay-per-view momentum I have going on for myself personally. But nothing really big. I have some ideas in the works, but, I don't have anything set yet. So, I just, stay tuned. And, I appreciate everyone who clicks, tweets, tells me I suck, tells me I'm good, listens, whatever the case may be. I appreciate it all. And, I'm just going to keep going.
What are the websites that whenever anybody is, bored and wants to torture themselves with amazing writing, where can they find you website-wise when it comes to all your work and your articles?
I'm on mymmanews.com. I'm on combatpress.com. I'm on bjpenn.com. I'm also the co-host of the SFLC podcast with Ryan Sprague. He does great work as well. And then just social media.
No, we're gonna plug all that before I get Ben Askren or Rory McDonald. Who do you got?
I don't think that fight happens.
Really? Oh, don't do me like that, Mike. Come on.
That fight won't happen.
Oh man, that breaks. Rich Franklin. God damn it.
Maybe I'm wrong, but you got to have two people willing to fight, and I know Rory McDonald is willing to fight. I just think Ben Askren's life is too good. He doesn't need to fight.
That's interesting. I think that's the consolation prize since we're never going to see him in the UFC. I think that's the dream right there is to get him to Bellator. That's as close as we're ever going to get to see him in a promotion like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, but I think Ben Askren's fighting days are behind him. I think he's
interesting.
I think listen, Bellator was here not too long ago, and Scott Coker said it. You got to be ready to fight. And it's not a one-off deal. He wants people here who are going to fight multiple times, and it doesn't that wants to be Ben Askren. So Scott Coker and Bellator looking the other way.
Well, it's interesting too, right? Because they, with Paul Daly and MVP now, right? Like you're right, there is a weird transition. They're not looking for just the super fights; they're looking for consistent stars they can build.
Yeah, and listen, I mean, at the end of the day. We might get Rory McDonald and Gegard Mousasi. And that's probably the best fight that, despite the heavyweight Grand Prix they have going on, Gegard Mousasi and Rory McDonald is the best fight of the year that Bellator can make in my humble opinion. And I love Bellator. Bellator is great to me. But right now, I think that they need to look at making that fight. They need to look at making MVP versus Paul Daly. And if they really want to stay at the top right there, second in place to the UFC, I think they got to re-sign Michael Chandler.
Okay.
I don't know that, that's a done deal. but I don't have any inside source or information. I find the timing of Michael Chandler talking to Joe Rogan a little ironic. I find Michael Chandler going on Joe Rogan's show right around the time he's becoming a free agent to be a little ironic. That's all.
Do you ever think, and this is what I want to let you go on, do you think we're ever going to live in a day where we're going to see cross-promotion? And not just cross-promotion that we saw with McGregor and Mayweather, but will we ever see brand cross-promotion where a Bellator and a UFC, Bellator 1FC, what is World Series of Fighting now? Is that 1FC?
Professional Fighters League.
Thank you. So you don't think we're ever going to be desperate enough? I mean, they did get a bunch of millions of dollars to get to ESPN, but you don't think we'll ever be desperate enough to get a Rory McDonald, Tyrone Woodley 2 fight?
Nope.
I'm with you. It's a fool's dream, man. We could play fantasy booker all we want. Mike Pendleton, thank you so much, brother. Over half an hour talking MMA, UFC, Bellator, everything. I don't know where else you're going to get this type of content. I don't know where else you're going to see the grind that Mike does other than the bigwigs like an Ariel or some of the other guys who are now over at ESPN. Mike, I've known you since you were a student. I'm super proud of everything you're doing. I'm super proud of the grind that you're on. You definitely picked one of the sports that's the hardest to get into, and you found the way to really put, set your name into it, and you're really starting to build something, man. Proud of you, and I'm super excited to talk to you down the road about this amazing sport and some of these cards that we're getting.
Hey, man, I appreciate that. Like I said, I don't do anything special. I just try to capitalize on opportunity, and I appreciate everyone, whether you like the work, hate the work, or don't even care about the work. It's all the same to me, and it's Max Holloway. It is what it is. I don't really look at it. I don't try to feed into any of it. I'm appreciative of all the sport, and I like it, but I got a job to do, and I'm not done until I can live this life 24/7. And that's what I'm working at. So I appreciate it, and I can talk MMA with you whenever you want.
I look forward to it, and we're going to keep you up on that offer.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
A huge thank you to Mike Pendleton for joining us on Mercado Airwaves. Check out all his work. He is one of the best and brightest young writers and minds we have in the business when it comes to MMA and a lot of different sports. So please check him out. Thank you, Mike. And thank you all for joining us. Let us know what was your favorite fight of UFC 225. Let us know what are you looking forward to for UFC 226 and down the road in this great MMA world. I'm at Twitter at mmercado2333. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. Download us on all your favorite podcast sites at Mercado Airwaves. A huge thank you to all our producers at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. And a huge thank you to each and every one of you for joining us. We will see you next time here on the Mercado Airwaves Network. I'm Mike Mercado. What's up, friends? Mike here from Mercado Airwaves. If you missed any one of our past interviews with amazing guests like future Hall of Famer and pound for pound best fighter in the world, UFC flyweight champion Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson,
Another day at the operator to go out there and test my skill.
to award-winning producer, director, and actor Orlando Jones,
Orlando, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, sir. I'm good, brother. How you doing?
and all the other interesting guests we've had on. Joining us today is director and writer David Ferrier.
Thanks so much, brother. I appreciate you having me on the show.
MMA legend Chael Sonnen joins us today.
Keep listening to your show. This is great. Thanks, my friend.
Just subscribe to us on iTunes at Mercado Airwaves. And while you're there, please like, review, and rate us, friends. It helps so much. We also have a Patreon for anyone who would like to support the show. Just visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves and see how you can get all of our interviews ad-free and before anyone else, and how you can get your business or company spotlighted on the show. Follow us on Twitter at mmercado2333. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/MikeMercado2333. And if you would like to see what we're up to behind the scenes, follow us on Instagram, MikeMercado2333. Thanks for listening and all the support.
Mercado Airwaves is brought to you by supporters at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves.
Unhappy with your current living situation? Want to get out of your parents' house? Do you live in the Chicagoland area? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then I have the realtor just for you, Amy Lonsky with Keller Williams. Hey, this is Mike Mercado from Mercado Airwaves and Outreach Radio Chicago. When the special lady and I started looking into buying instead of renting, we only trusted one person, and that's Amy Lonsky. With a passion for real estate, Amy will put you and your family first so you can start your life in your new dream home. Contact Amy for any other inquiries at 630-550-1518. That's 630-550-1518. Or email Amy at amylonsky@kw.com. That's AIMEELONSKI at KW.com.